Hi everyone, this is For the Love of Comics, where we celebrate the breadth and the depth of the comics medium. I hope you're having a good week. I've had a good week so far. It's been busy and it's going to be a pretty busy weekend too. But it's going to involve comics, so it's not all drudgery. Today I thought I could share with you a couple of new arrivals. I did one of these videos a couple of weeks ago and people seemed to like it. And here I'll include 3 different categories. The stuff I ordered online that has arrived. And this contains a couple of recommendations or suggestions from commenters on this channel. So I'm excited about those. Then there are a couple of comics that my friend from Bangalore sent me from the Bangalore Comic-Con that took place a couple of weeks ago. And finally, the haul of comics from the Indie Comics Fest New Delhi that I attended a couple of weeks ago and made a short video of. You can find that video linked in the top corner of your screen. I'll also make some timestamps and leave them below so you can jump around and find what you're interested in. So let's take a quick look at some of our new arrivals. First up, I have Cerberus. I've heard a lot about Cerberus. It's one of the most famous, long-running indie comics of all time. It's extremely groundbreaking, path-breaking, record-breaking, and I consider it one of the big holes in my reading because it's so famous. I tried to find copies of it in the past. I've had some issues, but recommendations in the comments section made me interested in it again, and I was glad to find Cerberus bi-weekly, these reprints of the original issues. So the originals started, I think, in the 1970s, so this is from 1988 and 89. So the reprint of issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, 4, and 5. So for about $5, I picked up the first 5 issues of Cerberus, and I'm excited to finally get to read this series, and I'm happy to have this rather unusual format. If I enjoy it, I'll start looking for the trades. Then we have The Ballad of Halo Jones, volumes 1, 2, and 3 in a new printing. Those of you who watch this channel know that I'm a big fan of Halo Jones. You saw a couple of different editions of this book already on my Shelf 2 video. This is a new recolored version of the black and white classic. There had been a colored version by Quality Comics in the 1980s, but it was poorly and cheaply done. This looks a lot slicker and smoother and more subtle. It definitely transforms the book, which happens to be one of my favorite science fiction stories, one of my favorite Alan Moore stories, so I'm looking forward to seeing what this brings to this story. I'm a fan of having different kinds of editions and color and black and white versions, so as soon as I saw this, I knew I was getting it. And the third thing that has arrived is this volume of Prince Valiant. Now, like Cerberus, I've heard a lot about Hal Foster's classic series and how important and how beautiful it was. I've often seen copies of these handsome Fantagraphics hardcovers in bookstores, but I've always been a little nervous about spending what is, a decent amount of money on something that I may not enjoy, that I might find old-fashioned or boring. But again, in the comments, there was a discussion on Prince Valiant. It rekindled that curiosity. I went looking for it and I was surprised to find this volume on sale for very cheap, like for about 500 rupees, less than $10. So I jumped at it. Of course, this is volume 12. That's the one that was on sale, 1959 to 1960. So this is like the third decade of Prince Valiant that I'm going to try to jump into. But maybe it got more sophisticated, maybe it got really polished, and maybe volume 12 will be a good place to start. In any case, I'm excited about this volume. Next, we move on to a couple of comics from the Bangalore Comic-Con. This is a copy of Paradiso issue 1, which is written by Ram V, drawn by Dev, and lettered by Aditya Bidikar. So there are 3 creators from India on this Image Comics, which is itself cause for celebration. This is an interesting sci-fi story, and Ram and Aditya were at the Bangalore Comic-Con, so I sent this to my friend and he got this signed on my behalf, which is the same thing for the issue of The Savage Shores #1. The Savage Shores is a brand new comic coming out from Vault Comics. I've not actually read any comics from Vault Comics before this one, but this was a great first issue. I'm probably going to have to wait for the trade for the rest of them because I don't know how to get the singles. So this got signed by Ram, Aditya, and Sumit Kumar, the artist, at the Bangalore Con as well. And Ram also has a story in Batman Secret Files #1, so a copy of that. Along with these 3 issues, my friend also sent me this Red Sonja comic with this variant cover. I asked him why, and he said because you're a fan of Lego and it had Lego on the cover. That's not Lego, that's Funko Pop, but I really appreciate the gesture. It is the thought that counts. Thank you very much. And finally, we come to the comics that I picked up at the Indie Comics Fest New Delhi 2018. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go over all the postcards and posters and bookmarks that we also picked up. I'm going to focus only on the comics. Also, I'd like to note that there were a lot more people out there than I was able to meet, and there were a lot more comics out there than I was able to get. So this is by no means comprehensive. And again, this is only the Delhi Indie Comics Comics Fest. The Indie Comics Fest in India is in 5 or 6 cities, I think, right now. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. Starting with the books, here are a couple by Sumit Kumar. There's The Itch You Can't Scratch, which is a comics memoir about him becoming a comic book artist. And Amar Badi, Tomar Badi, Nakshal Badi, which I have not read yet, but is a political, historical, and satirical take on the rise of the Naxal movement. Co-founder of the Indie Comics Fest, Bharat Murthy, had his collection of short stories aptly titled Shorts, as well as the new comics magazine Verite, which he edits. Verite is an anthology of Indian comics on this side and Japanese manga on this side. The Japanese manga is translated. I haven't finished reading through the whole thing, but I think it's just a fantastic initiative. This is Dark Shala by Satya and Nandita, who have collaborated on a couple of horror stories. A Comic's Existence, a sketch diary by Nandita Basu. 2 thin little zine stories by the team of CG Salamander writing and Ravi Gupta drawing, Breakfast for Nausea and Madly in Love. Apu Pen's latest Rashtraman, Rashtrayana, Trouble in Paradesh. This is my first Apu Pen. I hope I can jump right in. I know that all his books take place in the same world or the same kingdom. I don't have a very good idea, but I'm hoping that this is a good standalone read, and if I enjoy it, I'm definitely seeking out the other books. It looks really interesting. Then we have a series of non-fiction comics by Sharad Sharma, Communalism Explained, a graphic account by Ram Punyani and Sharad Sharma, which does contain comics but is really a combination of prose and illustration to talk about some difficult to understand concepts. 2 other Sharad Sharma books are Whose Development and Parallel Lines, both of them World Comics India publications, using comics as social commentary and empowering voices that may not otherwise be heard. Very interesting stuff. From the larger bound books, we go to some of the smaller pieces. This is a free little comic booklet given out to every attender of the Indie Comics Fest that is a manga that instructs you on how to make your own little 4-6 page comic book. Very cute and very clear. Hirsutism, a comic about polycystic ovarian syndrome by A.P. Pyle. A very interesting, expressive and personal approach to dealing with a medical condition. Then there's this 8-page black and white comic, The Life and Death of Mao by Ita Mehrotra, about a cat. And here are 2 comics by Nikhil Gulati. The People of the Indus and the Birth of the Indian Civilization, which is essentially a fully fleshed comic made out of large sheets folded and stapled together, whereas Shepherd's Hill, The Rise and Fall of Golconda, is a square-bound magazine-sized comic. These look really good. Milk and Quickies, 5 strange little stories designed for instant gratification, written by Anupam Arunachalam and illustrated by Abhijit Kini. This is an unusual but extremely artistically done 8-page card zine magazine-sized comic by Lokesh Khodke called Letters to O, in the form of 4 letters telling a fable of sorts. Then there is the newspaper-sized Comics for All World Comics Bulletin that I also picked up from Sharad Sharma's table. There were many such newspapers which are essentially a compilation of comics drawn by a variety of people at the grassroots level who were in workshops and were empowered to use comics to tell their stories. These are people from all walks of life and all situations, from what I understood. And this is just one of the many samplers they have. At the end of the year, I think they compile all the comics that they have generated in their workshops and put them together in this. And after going through this, I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a couple more. I hope you enjoyed this little haul video. I know it's a little haphazard, but I really wanted to share all of these comics with you and maybe pique your curiosity into checking them out if you can. If you enjoyed this video, leave me a like, subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you as always for watching. This is For the Love of Comics, and I'll see you around.